And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra. Let me move myself a little bit off to the side here. And with me, as always, is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadare Enterprises would like to remind you that armed combat inside any of our... Oh, what was it? The term legal wanted me to use this time around. Upright combat mechanoids. That's right. Is not only encouraged, it's required.
We are back once again. I know I had this on the schedule last week, but things happened, so I had to kick it ahead about a week. May have been a blessing in disguise in the long run, but it is what it is. So, we haven't talked about Gundam in quite a while. In fact, I don't think we've dedicated a whole episode to something Gundam related. We've danced around it here and there, but not full-on focus on it. And obviously, there have been a myriad of games, only a small handful of which we've got officially here in the States. But one that I have a special fondness for is Battle Assault 2. Which, technically speaking, was one of the first that was directly made for the U.S. audience, even changing the initial setup for ones that the U.S. audience would be more familiar with. Obviously, being a sequel to Gundam Battle Assault, which is an American remake of the Battlemaster 2. The remake of the Battlemaster 2, taking out a lot of the original mecha and putting in ones that would be more familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after that, new generation comes along. We get the PS2 era, and we get a Gundam Battle Assault 3 featuring Gundam Seed. Yes, that was in the damn title, and yes, it is fucking stupid to do that. People give the featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series shit, but nobody gives this as much shit. Probably because less people played it. Because, for some reason that I do not fully understand, Bandai took what was a 2D fighter kind of game and turned it into a 4-person party fighter. Which, in my opinion, was a bad move because of the fact that even in the PS2 era, if you wanted to have 4 controllers, you needed to get that multi-tap periphery,
which I had.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got the multi-tap back in the day.
Yeah, but that's still an added hurdle.
Yes.
Obviously, PS3 onward, you can just Bluetooth your way to having 4 controllers connected to one thing, so it's not that big of a deal. And this was done to and I understand putting the featuring Gundam Seed, because this was done to capitalize on the massive push for Seed. I know the original Seed has its debates about whether or not it's a good season or not. I'm well aware of how things kind of went off the rails with Seed Destiny. Everybody's talked about that. And it's appropriate to bring that up given Seed Freedom came out earlier this year. I still have not seen Seed Freedom. I don't have it as a high priority to see Seed Freedom.
It's actually pretty good. I'd recommend it at least one watch for anyone who likes giant robots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I'm drunk enough, maybe I'll revisit Seed Destiny so I can see with better eyes why things fell off the rails. I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that they tried to make a sequel for something that didn't foster a sequel.
Yeah.
But I know for a lot of Gundam fans, they're like, okay, these are the ones that are proper Gundams, and these are the ones that aren't. Much like with Final Fantasy, I don't do that.
Yeah, I don't say that there's such a thing as a proper or improper Gundam. I just say that these mech designs look ugly! Fuck you, Iron-Blooded Orphans!
Yeah, and
there are only 2 good mech designs! Fuck you!
I know that some people are clowning on the recently announced GQX for its designs, but I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that that is a collaboration between Sunrise and Studio Kara. And if you wanted more standard-looking Gundam designs, why would you bring in Studio Kara? Like, Studio Kara is Anno's group. So, some of you may recall a while back when I talked about how disappointed I was with the Marvel Madhouse collab, where I felt that they played it straight. But the point is turning a. I think part of the reason why the idea of doing a 4-person party fighter affair didn't sit with me is, one, none of the previous Battle Assault games were like that, or its Japanese equivalent, the Battle Master. And 2, that sort of large multiplayer party fighting had been done a bunch of times already in other Gundam games. In particular, even if it isn't 4-person multiplayer, stuff like Federation vs. Zeon or Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, both of which were very good games and kind of handled that. But in terms of a dedicated 2D fighter, that was still more of a novelty. And yeah, it could also bring up stuff like Journey to Jaburo, but who actively liked Journey to Jaburo?
Me. I played Journey to Jaburo. It was actually very fun, except for one boss.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Do you now? Which boss am I talking about?
At least I thought I did.
There is a very specific boss that is not so fun to play against.
Mm-hmm.
It is,
And for the record, I have no plans on doing a ranking Gundam games because, 1, there's too many, and 2, there's too many that we didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to be as completionist as possible with those ranking things.
Yep.
Now, the other big reason that I wanted to explore this is we've had something of a surge when it comes to what's been referred to as anime fighters. A lot of the 2D fighters we've seen over the last decade that were building on the foundations of the Dojin fighter scene we saw in the early to mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that some people complain have too many mechanics. I'm sitting there going, hook that shit up to my veins. I'm into that shit.
Yes.
But I think for something like this, the general idea I'd like to lean into is building a hypothetical Battle Assault 4 that is carrying some of the DNA of more of a anime fighter as opposed to what's been done previously. And one could argue Battle Assault 2 fell into that category, but not quite as far as we could go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this was something I wanted to experiment with.
Okay, so what sort of experiment? How do we want to start this?
So, I think the first thing that would have to be established is how we'd handle mechanics. And
so what the real thing is, what mechanics are we looking for?
Yeah, look, as far as how we'd handle the now as far as the individual button controls, that's not as important. But there's a few things that can be established right out of the gate. One, we are going with a 2D fighter, or more accurately 2.5D visually. And two, the approach I think we should have is more akin to some of the 2.5D approaches we've seen from Arc System Works in the last few years. I remember bringing this up before we went live, but things like DNF Duel or Grand Blue Fantasy Versus would be things that we'd draw upon as our foundation, more so than things like Blaze Blue or Under Night in Birth. And another one to somewhat draw upon would be something like Dragon Ball Fighter Z.
Mm-hmm.
And when it now, the other reason is to examine what Gundams from various series post Seed would work well in a fighting game format, because I do think there's a fair few that have come out in the years since that could work. Yeah, and
absolutely 00.
And we will get to that.
But you're talking about series post Seed. The first one that comes to mind is 00. I mean, we have a Exia / Gundam 00 itself are straight up made for fighting games. I swear to God.
Mm-hmm.
Lock On would be a zoner. Lock On inside Dynamis, etc.
Hold that thought. We'll get to that.
Yeah,
we will get to that.
I'm just they're all four of those Gundam Meisters would definitely be good.
Mm-hmm.
But then you need Mr. Bushido in his custom flag.
Yeah. Now, part of the reason I brought up Dragon Ball Fighter Z is because there's one avenue that I'd like to tackle that hadn't been tackled in previous battle assaults and has been hinted at in other attempts at Gundam arcade fighters, but hasn't gone whole hog with it. And that is team battles. So the question is, which do you think would be a better setup? 2-on-2 or 3-on-3? Or do you think that's inconsequential?
Well, I think that is inconsequential because in some of the best team fighting games, you have the choice of either choosing up to 3 or choosing to just go single, which gives you, higher health, etc. But you've only got one fighter. I very much like when it comes to Team 2D fighters, the ones where you can choose how many team members you have up to a maximum of 3, and then if you only choose like 1 or 2, you're given some advantages to help balance things out. I think that would be the best layout. And obviously with these types of team fighters, as we've seen in Marvel versus Capcom and in Dragon Ball FighterZ, you can switch between your teammates at any point.
Mm-hmm. So now, given that, things like a boost gauge, that's going to be mandatory. Battle Assault 2 had an ammo gauge for certain special attacks. That's something I honestly think can be cut, because the main thing that used it in Battle Assault 2 was things like Vulcans, and you're not going to be using Vulcans all that much anyways. Plus, a good amount of mechs throughout the franchise don't even have the head Vulcans or something like that.
The whole harassment Vulcans thing wasn't just head. There's also been shoulders and chest versions as well.
Mm-hmm.
They existed in universe, at least, to take care of non-mobile suit small threats, like things like personnel or IFVs or even some tanks. Because those Vulcans are basically, if we're being honest here, the head Vulcans or shoulder Vulcans of any Gundam are essentially Gao 8. They're shooting, the depleted uranium monster cans at a rate of 75 per second.
Mm-hmm.
These things the A-10 Warthog does the BRAP and tanks die. It doesn't even have to shoot its missiles. So, the Vulcans are the same thing. But we have seen it specifically with G Gundam, the Vulcans used as a form of harassment, as a way to, for example,
I'm not saying get rid of the Vulcans, but more of the ammo mechanic that was in Battle Assault 2, for instance.
Yes, ammo. See, ammo as a resource only makes sense if you've got a very specific addition to the character. My best example is Johnny in Guilty Gear with glistering gold and his coins. And because if you hit people with the coins, you get leveled up Mistfinders.
Yeah, and those sort of sub mechanics I'd be perfectly fine with, and everybody more or less has that with that skill system that was in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and DNF Duel has something not too far removed from that.
Yeah, but having just ammo for Vulcans was dumb. Yes.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't just Vulcans, but it's more of having certain special moves that act in that manner, and if you run out of ammo, you can't use that special move anymore, which it felt like it was there for its own sake more than to emphasize the playstyle. So obviously having some sort of super meter is going to be paramount. I would say that the way that that's going to be used is obviously for special attacks, but also A trend that we've seen in the last few years is using sewer meters for EX variants of moves.
Mm-hmm.
An early adopter of this kind of thing would be like Street Fighter 4, where you have more powerful variants of standard special moves, as well as full-on Uber attacks that take up that same meter. That is the angle I think we can go with. Now, with that in mind, obviously there are some universes that I think we'd outright skip, and one of them is SD.
Yeah.
Just because having a bunch of short mechs will be about as fun as whenever someone plays Gon in Tekken 3.
Or Yoda in Soul Calibur 4, or God, we could keep going. Never mind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and really, the SD crew just doesn't fit most Gundam crossover aesthetics. Whenever an SD crew has to be a part of crossovers, it's usually in a situation where it doesn't interfere with live gameplay. Like,
hey there, John. Welcome to the party.
Hey there, guys. Sorry for completing the Doku challenge.
It's all good.
No worries, man.
But go ahead.
I was gonna say, also apologize if I sound a little off today. I think I'm coming down with something, but I should be good for the day.
Well, I hope you feel well, and I hope it doesn't get any worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Put it
all I
that
could
way.
ask for.
Yeah.
The big thing is, like, whenever we've seen SD Gundams mixed in with normal Gundams, Monk, it's usually in either crossover games like Cross Omega or Dimension Diver, the mobile crossover games, or in games like Generations Crossrays, where it's a tactical turn-based RPG, so them being SD doesn't really affect how gameplay could work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Throwing SD Gundams into a fighting game, which is live action and also competitive, just wouldn't fit the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
No, it would look weird.
Yeah, and again, as Monk pointed out, it's like choosing Gon in Tekken 3, or Odd Job in the original GoldenEye.
Oh God.
John, I've told you my rule whenever someone picked Odd Job in GoldenEye at my place.
Oh yes, you have told me about the Odd Job rule.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Odd Job rule is a kind of a universal thing, to be honest. I can't think of a single gaming group I knew who didn't punch that person in the dick, Monk. It's like, oh, you chose Odd Job. Well, once this match is done, because you're gonna win anyway, because aiming on the N64 version of the game means you have to stop moving.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you. You get a dick punch. Good job.
Yeah.
The only way you could get away with Odd Job is if you use the thing where everyone can play Odd Job. Otherwise, it's pointless.
And obviously, when GoldenEye Source came around, I didn't have that rule because there wasn't a need to.
Yeah, you could still move and aim.
Mm-hmm.
But that's beside the point.
Yeah.
With
to catch up a bit, we've been going into kind of the foundation on how things work. So, as well as me clowning on the WTF decision of Battle Assault 3. But obviously 2.5D visually. This is most likely going to be a tag fighter, or where tag teams are an option. But if you want to do solo, you do have benefits on that.
yeah,
It does make sense because a lot of times Gundams work in teams, so having a tag team setup does make sense there.
Mm-hmm.
well, and like the best tag fighters I've played are always the ones where you can have up to 3 characters, but you don't necessarily have to choose all 3. You can put in 2 or even 1. and you swap
Yeah.
between them in battle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what Mugen set up with their system.
Yeah.
Mugen's a different beast entirely. Let's
Yeah.
not get
Oh,
into
no,
Mugen.
Oh, trust me, I know. I've definitely more than dabbled in Mugen.
Yeah.
Same.
We also brought up how the ammo system that was in Battle Assault 2, that's getting cut. Because it was more or less there for its own sake. There wasn't really a reason for it.
The only place it made sense was on the ball, because it had the cannon on the top of its head, and well, that cannon had
maybe
limited
make
shots.
a character specific thing having an ammo count, but otherwise I would say not make it universal.
These are the meters I was thinking. Obviously, health, a super, and a boost meter. Those are the main three.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And Mario, we're currently discussing the foundations of mechanics and also what series after Seed we would add, because well, Gundam Battle Assault 2 was a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
G Gundam will. I'm sure we would almost certainly put in G Gundam because it's literally made for fighting games. But let's
yeah.
But part of the reason I wanted to do this was to look into post-seed entries that would fit, and there's plenty that I believe are natural fits for a fighting game.
Yeah.
We had just brought up that one of the series that's going to be on the no-fly zone list is obviously SD, just because it's not going to work unless you want to really piss people off. And while
everybody would start choosing SD fighters and then it'd centralize.
Yeah, but the big reason for the boost gauge, the boost gauge is there for the mobility options, since mobility is a big deal and in 2D fighters, since they're all about territory control, and having a boost gauge to allow for rapid movement both towards and away, as well as a way to having a way to dodge, I think is going to be important. It also allows us to do one thing that none of the Battle Assault games did, and that's have stages completely in space, where it's going to end up feeling less like a typical 2D fighter and more akin to something like Psychic Force.
Yeah, I would like to point out, Monk, that the mobility option on all suits is a good idea, because I just remembered in the annals of my childhood mind, where I played Gundam Battle Assault 2 with all of my friends for like 3 months on end after school. There was a Gundam. There were two Gundams that we allowed people to pick only if A, they were really good with them, or B, really bad with them. Really good with them, we only allowed is the ball. We only allowed people to pick the ball if they were really good with it, because otherwise they were going to get bodied. I was one of the few people who would pick the ball on a regular basis, because I have embarrassed my friends with the ball. The only other one we allowed people to pick if they were bad with it, because if they were good with it, you could never fucking catch it and you would never die, is Grandpa Gundam. Do you remember how fucking squirrely that bastard is in Battle Assault 2?
Yes.
No, Grandpa Gundam was off limits to anyone except some people who were bad with him. Because even people who were bad with him could still do a decent job just swirling around with his goddamn mobility.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that in mind, I had at one point considered some sort of loadout system because some characters have a variety of equipment that they use and some don't. I ultimately nixed that idea because of the fact that it's inconsistent between series.
Well, you can do it the same way many of the Marvel fighters do it, where you just choose like what special they're going to use when you call them in for assist.
Yeah, that's probably the closest. But I was thinking of, consider how something like Strike had multiple forms.
Just Monk, you just make that a special move.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with then.
Because there are plenty of hell, Amaterasu in Marvel vs. Capcom, you have to do things to change between reflector Magatama beads and glaives. It's the same thing. Equipment change is a common thing in Team Fighters, actually.
All right, that I will note, John, to catch up. One other thing we decided is that special moves have EX variants that use that super meter.
Like most fighting games.
Yeah, no, that fits.
I'd used it as an early example of what I was thinking with that Street Fighter 4. And
Fighter 4, or basically any Guilty Gear game.
Yeah, and obviously, some of the mechs will end up having some sort of fourth meter to represent some specific mechanic.
Hello, everything from Gundam 00 with Trans Am.
Much in the same way as earlier, before you came in, Zan had brought up Johnny from Guilty Gear and how he has his own meter for his particular mechanics.
Glistering Gold is an ammo meter for his coins.
Mm-hmm.
Or Glistering Gold has an ammo meter, I should say.
If I were to use another Guilty Gear example, Order Soul. And his
Robokai.
Yeah, and his bullshit. And
Robokai and the little robots you can send out.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the more recent series, I'd like to use the list from Battle Assault 2, and we can nail which ones we'd want to keep, which ones we'd want to drop. I think some of them would have to be dropped just so certain series don't get overexposure. Universal Century.
Yeah.
Sorry. I need to get that.
UC is gonna. The problem there, Monk, is even if we truncate UC as much as possible, it's still going to have a huge roster.
It's going to, and we can afford, because of the fact we're doing the 2.5D, we can afford to have a larger roster than, say, the PS1 could.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. But the do you know what really pissed me off about the ball being in Battle Assault 2, Monk?
What?
The fact that the ball in Battle Assault 2 is supposed to be the 08MS team representative.
Yeah.
I was like, what? You couldn't have done, I don't know, the Comfer and the Gundam Alex? What?
Yeah,
like you gave Shiro Amada the frickin' ball, which he only used maybe for like half of the first episode.
You want to know what entry had a better use of the ball? Or I won't say a better use, but a more fun use of the ball for me.
What's that?
Federation versus Xeon. Where you fire that cannon, you end up doing a triple backflip.
I love it. Before we even go through the roster, something I want to put forth now. Mobile armors, not mobile suits, mobile armors, such as Big Zom, Xiong, etc., should really be boss units. As playable units, they were either so overpowered it was unfun to fight them,
Psycho
or
Gundam.
so easy. I'm sorry.
You throw up in your
I think
mouth.
I think I'm having a stroke.
Yeah.
I smell smunk and the taste tossed. But Psycho Gundam, yes, or they were so easy to cheese it didn't matter. Hello, Big Zom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they should be boss units.
Mm-hmm. And given that they are boss units, one, they're not playable. Two, they can afford to be bastards. If you want to have them as SNK style bosses, you could do that.
I can only think of two that should be SNK style bosses, but I'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the roster for 2. from the wiki, and
Same.
I'm gonna go from top to bottom on this, and we can decide whether we keep it or we toss it. If we keep it, then I think we'd have to figure out a play style. So first one is good old Grandpa Gundam.
I think that Grandpa Gundam should actually not be here. If we're going to have an Amuro Ray representative, it should be something from Char's Counterattack or Belter
New
Chica's
Gundam is what
It's got to be
New-
the new Gundam. If
newer
we're not
Hi-Nu.
keeping the art, if we're not keeping the 78-2, we're keeping the new Gundam.
Yeah, new or high new. I would actually prefer high new because it's cooler.
Maybe make the new Hi-Nu an unlock.
An unlock would work.
Okay.
I would. Actually, here's an idea. With some of them, you could have a unlock variant and call it Master Grade. You know, to have the line between
Ooh.
high grade and Master Grade.
Yeah,
Considering we're probably going to be getting the Builds franchise involved at some point, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, but I see New Gundam as a. I know it'd be tempting to have that as the Jack of all trades, the Ryu equivalent. I don't think. Instead, I would say New Gundam is a territory controller.
considering what the fin funnels do, you're not wrong.
No,
Very often, if you look at how New Gundam was used in Char's Counterattack, or read how High Nu was used in Belter Tika's Children, he very, very rarely uses things like the beam sabers on that thing. He's shooting things with the what was the name of that fucking rifle? It wasn't just a beam rifle. It was something it had a very specific name, but fuck it, I'm not gonna worry over that. He'd shoot things with the rifle or with his hyper bazooka, or of course the fin funnels would just create a field of death, or my favorite thing that the High Nu Gundam gets, the hyper mega bazooka launcher cannon, which was literally a high particle cannon removed from the Argama and used as a fucking rifle, and plugged into the Nail Argama's reactor, so he had enough fucking Minovsky drive reaction to shoot the fucker.
Okay.
Because as we say, ain't no kill quite like overkill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be a super attack for sure.
Absolutely.
So Zaku 2.
Again, I think if we're going to go with Amuro and Char, they need to have some of their best suits. So we need the Nightingale. We do not need the Zaku 2. I love the Zaku 2, or the Sazabi, I should say, but still. Sazabi, Nightingale, it's the same fucking thing. Fuck y'all.
Yeah.
But
I would say the Sazabi is a similar territory controller, but far more close range.
yeah, because it doesn't... It has funnels, but it doesn't have as much gun. Well, it has bits, technically.
Yeah, but it's... Because the Sazabi never came off as beam spam as New Gundam could.
Well, if you look at what the Sazabi has for guns, it has a rifle that can be turned into a longer rifle, and then it has the waist-mounted particle cannons that's a shotgun at close range.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Because it's a wide beam. It's why it's called the scattering mega particle cannon. But it more often had beam tomahawks and beam sabers, and its zoning would be closer.
Mm-hmm. So with that, you have our own weird ass variant of the Ryu and Ken dichotomy, just without the Ken flowchart. But obviously, Big Zom is under boss category.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd say
Well, and that's even if we have the Big Zom.
Yeah.
Like the Big Zom as a mobile armor, the Big Zom was weak too. Like I don't think we should have the Big Zom.
Considering we're gonna have other boss fights down the road with other series, I think you can cut the big Zom and not really lose much.
Maybe it's just me, but the Big Zom always felt like it reminded me of the King Tiger. Since
Yes.
there's a lot of Newt Z analogs with Xeon, and the big one is spending way too much money on Uber projects that weren't gonna work.
Yeah.
And you ask any tank expert about the King Tiger, and they will rant for about a minute about how it's awesome to look at, but as a fighting tank, it was awful because it was heavy as hell and had a lot of manufacturing problems and relied on rare materials that were harder to get as the supply lines got fucked with, because it was reliant on tungsten, and they had to import tungsten from Turkey. But given that, would you keep Zeong or would you drop it? Because Zeong is another territory controller.
I think and the Zeong is this weird mobile suit that's semi-mobile armor-ish in certain ways. I don't think we need the Zeong. No. Especially since when we get to Gundam Unicorn, we're going to be using the Neo Zeong anyway.
Yeah.
And that one's definitely a boss fight.
And
got the Neo Zeong. Fuck.
As far as the Act guy, that I'm dropping that.
Cut it.
I mean, it was a fun little fighter back in Battle Assault too, but yeah.
Let's see. Ball cut.
Yep.
Now
the question is, do we want to add the Comfer?
We'll get to that later.
Okay.
Hygog from 0080.
Why is it the representative for 0080?
Because Mikau was drunk that week.
I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it when they don't have the actual...
Yeah, why wouldn't you have the NT1? Probably because it's too much like the RX, it's probably too much like the OG that they didn't want to keep that. But in this case, we've already cut the RX 78-2, so let's throw in the friggin' NT1.
Yeah, but we'll get to that later. He wants to go over the original roster, and then we'll add things in later.
Yeah, fair.
And yes, I know I was mixing up 8th MS Team and 0080 were in the pocket, but still.
Physalis.
We can keep Physalis, actually.
But it's gonna be more of a tank.
And we can even keep the Noisiel as a boss. Why fucking Zephranthes or the Dendrobian Stamen isn't here is beyond me, but...
Okay, calm thyself. That's why we're I've never seen Zan this consistently pissed off.
Now, the 3 entries that from Zeta Gundam are technically not playable in Battle Assault 2, but you can get them if you cheat.
I'm fine with keeping the Zeta Gundam in the O. I don't think we need the Cubile though.
I won't lose sleep about losing the Cubile.
Well, the Cubile is just a shittier Sazabi, to be honest.
So,
if I'm being perfectly honest, the Cubile is just a shittier Sazabi.
So, how would you handle the playstyle of the Zeta Gundam?
Zeta Gundam's going to be a switch-up fighter. The big thing is that because of the Wave Rider mode, they've got the mobility, but that's only going to be like for certain types of attacks, and or if in space, you could probably stay in Wave Rider mode longer. But it's definitely a switch up. Like Zeta Gundam was an all-rounder. It had its fucking beam rifle could turn into a beam saber bigger than it was. Okay? Let's not forget that it didn't use its normal beam saber much at all anymore after it started using the high beam saber from the fucking beam rifle or mega launcher, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I know there are official names. I'm just shorthanding here.
But
the big thing is that, like, because of the fact that he does switch between the Wave Rider mode and the Zeta Gundam itself, because that was the whole thing about Zeta, was transforming mecha. Because the Hayaku Shiki's there too, which I think we should add, but I'll get to that later.
Yeah, but when it comes to the O
is an interesting beast because it really doesn't have much to it comparatively, other than the subarm thing. So if I were going to use it, or if I were going to do it, it's long range is really only the beam rifle, and you could probably make that beam rifle a part of its like special attacks. And what it would really do is it would use its main arms and subarms for a lot of rushdown.
But I know one of the big things was that the O was a heavy boy. So
yes,
yeah,
I'm thinking the downside with the O is that it has the lowest boost gauge.
it has a lower one for sure. I would say that that doesn't mean that it's going to be slow with its arms and subarms though. Those subarms are fast as fuck, boy.
Yeah, it's a ground game rush downer. It's not going to be doing a whole lot of air combat.
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So then we have the stuff from Double Zeta. First being Full Armor's Double Zeta.
I think that what we should do with Full Armor Double Zeta Gundam is it is a changeable. It's unlocked from the beginning. You have Double Zeta, and then you have Full Armor Double Zeta, and Full Armor Double Zeta is going to have all the shit Full Armor Double Zeta already has, and it's going to be slow. It can't transform, but it's or slower, I should say, and it can't transform, but it's got the heavy hitting shit and a lot of the big weaponry. But I also think that Double Zeta should have an ability to purge its full armor mode, so it goes into normal Double Zeta Gundam, and you get the G-Fortress mode back and everything.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of doing a leveling approach where it gradually goes from Double Zeta to enhanced to full armor as the match progresses.
While that would be fun mechanically, it doesn't really make sense from the perspective of Double Zeta itself. What I would say is that we have enhanced Double Zeta and full armor Double Zeta, and if you choose full armor Double Zeta, you can purge the armor just like it can actually do in universe to eject the armor components, and then you're back to enhanced Double Zeta.
Mm-hmm. All right. Then there was the Queen Mansa.
I don't think we should have the Queen Mansa, because when we get the Kusrinada, we're going to have the superior version of the Queen Mansa. I think the big thing here is that when it comes to Gundam Double Zeta, the Double Zeta was kind of its own. Nothing could really stand up to it. Like, the Metuses were, grunt units. We saw things like the Zeta and the Hyakshiki. We saw the Gym 3. We saw Gundam Mark II in there, and the Gym 2. But there was nothing that could stand before Double Zeta. And there wasn't anything really comparable on the Zeon or Neo Zeon side.
Yeah, I was about to bring up the Hama Hama.
No. The Hama Hama's cool, but no.
Right. And now we get into G Gundam.
And
we're just keeping that roster.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's two ways to go about this, considering how big our roster is already going to be. You can either keep the majority, at least keep the main five. Burning, Maxter, Dragon, Rose, Bolt, and then maybe have the Dark Gundam as a boss fight.
No, we'd want to keep
Or-
Master Gundam as well because people will riot if we do not have Master Asia.
Yeah, the other option I was going to suggest is pick the two biggest representatives from that series, being the God Gundam and the Master Gundam.
I think that we just keep roster as is, and Dark Gundam becomes, and Devil Gundam becomes Devil Colony as the boss battle.
Ooh, okay, I see what you're going for.
Yeah, I know that Devil Gundam does have its Gundam form, but that Gundam form's OP as shit. So making it a boss battle is going to be much more satisfying, to be honest.
See,
Yeah.
Burning is pretty much it's pretty much straightforward. You could pretty much copy over the playstyle of Burning from the original game.
You could do it for basically all of them, to be honest.
Like Dan said earlier, these guys were pretty much designed to be fighting game material with how they're designed. Most of these guys are close range fighters with some limited long range capabilities.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way: when it comes to the G Gundam crew, G Gundam is just wuxia movies in Gundam.
Yeah.
So, I think we can keep the entire G Gundam roster as is, and except for the fact that we take Devil Gundam and we turn it into a boss encounter that is the Devil Colony. It can even have multiple phases. Ooh.
Let's see. I think Burning, you wouldn't have to change too much. Maxter, I would probably refine into being more of a comboist.
It definitely, because since he's a boxer / footballer.
Yeah. Combos is got to be his main forte there.
Dragon.
Mid-range zoner.
Yeah, Dragon's a zoner.
As well, mid-range zoner, because Rose is going to be the long-range zoner.
Yeah, he's going to be... Actually, I think Rose is going to be the crowd control because he's got those Rose bits.
Yeah.
What I was thinking with Rose is... Rose is one for people who abuse parrying.
Given his French fencer background, yeah, that fits.
Well, the big thing with Rose is that he does a combination of zoning and close range. I think Monk, you know who Gundam Rose is in our game?
Who?
Testament. Remember how Testament's Exe Beasts are used to draw in and push out enemies for both close range and far and long range tactics?
He's a frame trapper. Yeah.
I can see that.
A frame trapper with parry mechanics. That is terrifying.
Well, let's be honest. Out of the 4 Shuffle Alliance members that Domon had to beat to get them back into the Alliance, Gundam Rose gave him the most issues.
There's no doubt about that.
Now,
I mean, even with Bolt Gundam, all he had to do was overcome all he had to do was observe that Argo's knee was fucked and be like, yeah, fuck you, Argo. But with George, he's like, how the fuck do I beat all these moving bits? And he's like, I've got to make a literal tornado.
Now, as far as Bolt, command grab.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, Bolt has command grabs, and then its hammers are basically, I would say, special moves / super moves involved. Obviously, the Gaia Crusher is going to be its ultimate. But,
Yeah.
I'd say with Master,
it's another Ryu and Ken situation.
Yeah.
Except no, it's more of a Ryu and Akuma situation.
Yeah. Master Gundam will be slightly slower but slightly stronger, I'd say.
Yeah. And we already handled Dark. So then we get into Wing. And
so I'm going to be honest here. When it comes to Wing, I'm going to shit on some fans of 4 and 5 here, but the Sandrock and the Nataku are just not that interesting. What makes Katra interesting is he made his own fucking mercenary corps, and he's kind of a genius, which also makes the Zero system hurt him very, very much.
I think for the Sandrock, that should be one of his supers, is calling upon his army to just unleash a massive wave of attack on him.
So basically, just about every one of his ultimate attacks in Super Robot Wars games. Got it.
Pretty much. But let's start from the top.
Yeah, now a lot of the Wing representatives in Battle Assault 2 were technically Endless Waltz representatives, with the exception of Epion.
Because it wasn't in Endless Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I'm fine with keeping Epion as a dedicated parry focus.
Well, you kind of have to, because Epion doesn't really have guns.
Mm-hmm.
No, it has its laser whip.
That whip is actually a bunch of heat rod segments put together. It's a heat. Everything it has besides its beam saber is physical, technically.
Yeah.
So,
of course, its beam saber is also connected directly to its Minovsky drive. So, well, it's not Minovsky technically, just a nuclear reactor.
Similar, equivalent.
It is dedicated to being close with. I'd say the heat rod would be used as setups for melee. You know, a way to get you in close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you could.
You could do a long distance, like grab and pull, kind of like a scorpion type thing.
Mm-hmm. It's just instead of you pulling the enemy closer to you, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Wing Zero, I'd say that can. Wing Zero, I wouldn't need to change all that much. It is most definitely in the zoner category.
I mean, most of its attacks are based on its freaking giant beam cannons.
The Buster Rifles.
Yeah. I was a pain in the ass with Death Scythe Hell back then.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna pull another Guilty Gear here, Monk. I want Death Scythe Hell to have Chip's Enough's invisibility bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of did.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as good as Chip's is.
I would say a good equivalent, like, for Death Scythe Hell would be like Noob Saibot in Mortal Kombat, using the shadows as his as to sneak around, a pseudo teleport kind of deal, where he blends into the shadows, comes up behind you, and strikes.
Yeah. But Heavy Arms is always turning the battlefield into an obstacle course with his zoning.
Yeah.
He's not even a zoner technically. He's a denier.
Yeah.
You do not get close, because if you get close, well, Troa has issues. Of course, Hero in the Heavy Arms and a beam saber in hand.
I would say regarding that his Gatling guns are anti-ground. His missiles are anti-air.
Yeah. I still want us to have the Gatling gun punch, though.
Of course.
Yeah.
You gotta have some close range combat, even if it's not his specialty. And of
Well-
course,
Oh.
Sorry, like I said, I'm not feeling the best. And of course, his ult would absolutely be just full weasel unit total assault.
Yeah. Now when it comes to Sandrock, it sounded like you wanted Sandrock to be dropped.
I honestly, Sandrock and Nataku are just like, Nataku is literally Dragon Gundam. It's just Dragon Gundam again.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need it. And Sandrock, while, like John pointed out, it'd be cool to have an ultimate where he pulls in the entire Magalak Corps. Sandrock as a fighter, I don't The heat shotels are okay. Putting them in the shields to make the heat scissors is kind of cool, but Sandrock is just so boring. Sandrock is boring, and Nataku is an XP from a previous Gundam show, and is a worse version of that Gundam. I just can't justify having Sandrock and Nataku, and I don't care what other people might say. If they tell me that the Chicken Gundam, yes, that's what I call the Sandrock in most of the fan base, the Chicken Gundam is their favorite from Wing, I'm going to look at them, call them a dirty liar, and tell me to tell. I'm gonna be like, It's gonna be the X-Men First Class meme. Tell me your real favorite. I said your real favorite. Perfect. And I guarantee you, one of those favorites is going to be Tallgeese, Epion, Zero, Death Scyther, Heavy Arms.
I know I had that whole speech about how each of the Gundams in Wing were specifically built for a particular theater of combat, but some of them are not going to be as interesting in a fighting game.
Yes.
Now, that brings me to the last one from Battle Assault 2, as far as the Endless Waltz representatives, and that's Tallgeese 3.
The Tallgeese 3 is different enough from Epion that Zex or Hero having more than one unit that they can potentially jump into. Because a big thing I didn't like about Battle Assault is that you couldn't choose who your pilot was in the particular unit, because Trey's being in the Epion makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, they just did that because they didn't have a spot for it. They should have just replaced. If they're gonna put a Tallgeese in, put in the Tallgeese 2, and then give Zex the frickin' Epion.
Yeah, but like, because Trey's being in the Epion makes no sense since he's already dead at that point. But like, in our game, if someone has the potential, oh yeah,
God damn it,
fucking bots!
And it's been
not the good type of bots, like the ones we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Trey's was in the Epion made no sense, and I wished I could have put Zex in the Epion, because Zex in the Epion is iconic. I mean, so is Hero in the Epion, but Zex in the Epion is really the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So having two units that Zex or Hero can potentially pilot, and having a system where we can put Hero or Zex in them just by choosing it as a costume options, please. I think we can keep Tallgeese 3, because Tallgeese 3 is different from everybody else in the roster. Way different.
I think what we could do
good
is, instead of just choosing a mech at the character select screen, choose a pilot and then have a selection of mechs that they can pick from.
Yeah.
That'd be fun too.
As far as Tallgeese 3's playstyle, I am thinking the best way to put it is a grapple shooter. Like having the heat rod, but it's more to set up so that you have guaranteed ranged attacks rather than repositioning.
That can be one thing. With the way the Tallgeese works out in many games it appears, or in many places it appears in, it's an all-rounder, essentially.
An all-rounder with a big fuck-off cannon.
Yeah, that's its super. The Mega Cannon is its super.
Yeah, I'd say the Tallgeese 3 would be our all-rounder. If you need the Babby's first, I won't say Babby's first, but your jack of all trades character, so that you can get used to things. Tallgeese 3 is would definitely qualify.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, when it comes to some of the things it can do, some of the other mechs will be better at it, but that versatility is the strongest suit.
Yeah.
Now, let's see. There was also Hydra Gundam, which was from the last Outpost story, as well as the dual story
G unit.
Yeah. I don't know. Should we keep Hydra or drop it?
It's not really that iconic, at least to most people. I know that every time I say this mobile suit is not really that iconic, there's going to be at least one person, one Gundam nerd in the very background that goes, "But I love that Gundam," and I'm going to go, "Good for you."
Fucking hipsters.
Right?
Good for you. Go ahead, push up your Coke bottle spectacles at me some more, please. I'm going to nerd emoji you into fucking death.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to keep the Hydra Gundam, and I definitely think that if we have Psycho Gundam Mark III, it's a boss battle only.
Yeah, I already had that in my notes.
What
with its
Psycho
ridiculous
Gundam.
fucking beam spam. But then before we get into expanding, I do want to revisit this for some of the entries from Seed. I think we at the very least need to do that for completion's sake.
Well, before we start adding anything new, Monk, I think we need to discuss with what we have here things that we would take from the series and put into this that aren't here.
Yeah.
So such as from
start.
8th MS Team.
So let's consider it. So 8th MS Team. Let me get that.
I'm gonna be purely honest here. I actually think that 8th MS Team, while it's an entertaining story, doesn't really have a like the Gundam Easy 8 is not it's not a very special Gundam.
No, there's very little to it that makes it stand out from any other Gundam. I mean, it's an RX-79. It's only slightly improved over the RX-78.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if we're looking at anything that's in 8th MS Team, they're all very generic war, because this is still mostly a war story instead of a one-on-one story like 0080 will be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need representatives from 8th MS Team.
No.
I mean,
it's a great story, but
the only thing you could really add that's unique is maybe adding the Apsaris as a boss fight.
Maybe.
And that's a big if.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and the Apsaris is, it's kind of boring as a mobile armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's a big if.
Yeah. So I don't think we need a representative from 8th MS Team. I love 8th MS Team.
Yeah. I'd also say we don't need a representative from Victory Gundam.
I'm trying. I don't know. V2 Assault Shroud is pretty fucking cool, but you're probably right that we won't need Victory Gundam.
Mm-hmm.
Because really the only thing from the Victory Gundam itself is unique, and even then it's V2 with the Assault Shroud specifically that is unique.
And
now
I think a similar thing would apply with Igloo.
F91 as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, one from Universal Century that I think we do have to bring in, at the very least, is Unicorn.
Well, before we get there, Monk, from Gundam 0080 War in the Pocket, I think we should bring in both Gundam Alex and the Kempfer.
All right.
I know it's not technically called Gundam Alex, but fuck you, I call it Gundam Alex.
So, NT1.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, its nickname was Alex.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I absolutely think the Gundam Alex has enough unique to it to be a nice fighter, because of some of the really cool little hidden shit they did with it. It's kind of an ambush fighter.
So that brings the question of how would you handle it being an ambush fighter in the context of a fighting game?
In this case, there would be combo extenders that uses its little like pop-up Gatling guns and stuff to really chain together unique combos. Not like a rushdown, but like a more technical combo fighter.
In that regard, I'd say something that is very reliant on setups, probably a bit higher floor, because actually it would probably be equivalent to that one Shaolin character in Virtua Fighter, where Siegfried, where some of his moves are setups for certain stances that lead into other moves. But if you don't know the setup and follow through, you're going to be left exposed very easily. Not necessarily a stance dancer, but definitely a combo dancer.
Whereas the Kampfer is definitely going to be it's definitely going to be a close range burst damage type fighter, basically, because everything that it does is these closer ranged weapons that do massive damage in one hit but don't really combo well. You know, a shotgun, the large beam rifle is kind of an exception, but the chain mine, its heat hawk, the Sturmfaust and the giant bazooka are both much closer.
It's a hit and runner.
Yeah. And it's always bigger hits, which means if it whiffs, it's not very effective.
And the reason why I say a hit and runner is the idea I'm going with is that when it comes to their specials, they can do a good amount of damage and do inflict knockback, but you are left vulnerable for a second after hitting them. So you can if you don't manage distance, you can easily get punished.
Yeah. You've got higher recovery frames.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, with 0083 Stardust Memory, we need to add Zephranthes Volvernian, and then you don't really need to add Dendrobium Stamen at that point, because Dendrobium Stamen and Zephranthes Volvernian are kind of the same thing. The only thing that Dendrobium Stamen has unique to it is that it plugs into the Dendrobium Orchis to become a mobile armor.
And that can be handled as a finisher, but
yeah, that can be handled as a finisher, but we don't. I mean, we could make the Zephranthes and the Dendrobium Stamen basically the same slot. You just choose which one you're going to use, whether you want to use all of the mobility or whether you want to be able to have your Dendrobium finisher.
Now, given that, how would you handle the GP01 in terms of its playstyle?
In terms of its playstyle, it is it's the fast as fuck boy. You think Chips Enough is fast? No, this is faster. It is the lightning bruiser with the glass cannon complex, basically. Physalis is gonna struggle against it. Slower guys are gonna struggle against it. Faster guys are gonna have a little easier time of it, and anyone who can trap it is probably going to be able to chew through it. But it's going to be the one where, if you're playing it right, people aren't going to be able to track very well, and they're going to be pressured and on the defense most of the battle. So it's definitely that speedy. That's, like I said, like a lightning bruiser with a glass cannon complex.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Dendrobium Stamen is going to be slower, obviously, since it doesn't have full vernier. And it's going to be a little more of an all-rounder, except for when it calls in a weapon from the Dendrobium carrier. And of course, when it does its ultimate.
Yeah. So with Stamen, I could see that one actually being a bit of a stance dancer.
Yes, because you could change up weapons from the weapon carrier on the Dendrobium.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that we have covered what is in Battle Assault 2 and can now consider other Universal Sentry things.
Yeah, and like I said, the main one that is a necessity is Unicorn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, here is how I propose we cover Unicorn, and specifically Unicorn itself. It's all one character slot that you can choose between Unicorn, Banshee, Phoenix, and each will have their own unique combat style, because each is different with what armed armor they have equipped.
I think one of the big things, this might be a bit of a stretch, but what I'd be leaning into is a lot of Unicorn's playstyle would be built around the NTD system in a way that is somewhat reminiscent of the rider system in Kamen Rider Kabuto, in that it's a defensive approach until NTD is activated, which is only a temporary activation, at which point it goes a lot faster.
I can see that, but I would also say that there'd be ways to increase the NTD charge by fighting a little aggressively.
Kabuto is not the best example of what I'm thinking of. A better example would be Gabranth in Dissidia.
I can see that, but what I would say is that with the Unicorn, there's got to be a way to reward playing more aggressively before your NTD, and that's going to be increasing NTD charge much more rapidly.
Yeah, you remember how I brought up Order Sol earlier? You kind of have a setup there pretty well. Yeah,
and the biggest differences between each variation of the 3 Unicorn units. Obviously, base Unicorn has its basic stuff. It has the Beam Magnum. It has, its Beam Sabers. And when it goes NTD, it gets even more powerful. With Banshee, it has the armed armor VN, the vibration nails on one arm.
Mm-hmm.
It also technically has, I believe, the cannon too, that folds down on the other arm and can fire.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Phoenix has the shields and the tails and the XE Xeno Extender, as it's called, which is an extra backpack that does different stuff. But those shields can act kind of as bits for blocking things. I also think that full armor Unicorn should be an unlockable unit, and then as an entirely separate unit itself, Gundam Unicorn Perfectibility, which is a unicorn that has all of the armed armor pieces combined, and then Perfectibility Divine, which is a full armor perfectibility. I have to insist on these things because I've built too many unicorns not to.
Yeah.
And I still have a full armor unicorn to build somewhere.
Now, as far
we need the Kshatriya. I passed up on the Queen Mansa specifically so we could have the Kshatriya, because the Kshatriya is a four-winged version of the Queen Mansa, basically, piloted by another Kudu by the name of Marita Cruz.
Right. Could you spell that in council, not council, but in GeekWatch, so I have that?
The Kshatriya? Sure.
Yeah.
Hold on. Q2. Just actually, I'll do you one better. I'll just get the page
That'll work.
if it'll. The NZ666 Kshatriya. Doesn't it look like basically the Queen Mantha on steroids? I mean, I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Would you have that as a playable or as a boss type?
That's going to be a playable, as is Full Frontal's Nightingale.
Yeah, and I already have Nightingale written out. So
Yeah, but the boss battle is going to be the Neo Zeong.
I could see that.
Like-
So with Kshatriya or the Quad Wing, would you have that as the Air Master? I.e., it has better options in air than on the ground.
No, it is a ranged rushdown. It's about all of the shooting, kind of like not in the same way that Heavy Arms is area denial. The way that Kshatriya works is it has all of those wings carry bits, and those bits are exceptionally aggressive. Oh no, I know what I meant. The Sinanju, excuse me. Full Frontals is the Sinanju. That's right. We have the Nightingale / Sazabi already. The Kshatriya's whole thing is it has beam Gatling guns and bits, and then it also has built-in cannons and stuff. It is about the pelting you with so much ordnance you die, but it's not about doing that by volume, or doing that against massive amounts. Yeah. It's a much more duelist in that respect. And the way Merida uses it is very one-on-one.
It sounded like you did want to put in the Sinanju.
Sinanju. Yeah, so Full Frontal has something we can play instead of just having to fight the Neo Zeong later. Because the Neo Zeong would be the boss.
Yeah. Now, given that,
the only other addition from Universal Century, just because it doesn't get enough love, Crossbone Gundam.
So with the Sinanju, what would you see its playstyle being?
So the Sinanju is very much another one of those all-rounder types. It's got both close and far stuff, and it's it's got some very standard kit. It's just a better unit overall, mobility-wise, than say the Sazabi / Nightingale, because it's not got all that weird ass skirt armor. It's because you need more than just one all rounder in a fighting game.
Oh, yeah.
For one.
Yeah.
This is another all rounder. It's going to be a little more mobile than the Tall Geese is, but it's still going to be a generic, something you can use for a lot of different things. And it's also going to be one of those ones that, since it's an all-rounder, it's useful for filling gaps in a team or learning systems.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, then as far as like future century, so G Gundam, I can't think of any others to really add in.
We don't really need it.
Yeah.
No, we've already got too many people from G. If there's another series outside of the Universal Century that I would also consider, one that often gets overlooked, After War Gundam X.
That's what I was going to lean into next.
Brain cell, monk.
So the problem I have there is that when it comes to Gundam X, the only iconic Gundams it really has are Gundam X, Gundam Double X, and X Divider, technically.
I mean, we don't need to have like a big representative from like a whole bunch from every series, but you know, have at least one representative from some series wouldn't be a bad idea.
I mean, I think that if we're going to have a representative from Gundam X, it's the Gundam X, and it can also, as different forms, you know, again, the whole, you can choose different versions of the same unit on the same square. You can choose between Gundam X, X Divider, or Double X, and each changes how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like Gundam X is going to be your kind of your setup and payoff type fighter, because you're going to need to set up to be able to get your cannon shots in. X Divider is going to be your close range fighter, because, well, the entire reason we have the X Divider is because, well, the satellite cannon got damaged. And the X Divider gives you the beam shield with the beam harmonica. And it also is more mobile because that beam shield is also used as a set of boosters for hovering. Mm-hmm. And then the Gundam Double X is going to be your long range, your straight up long range fighter.
Yeah, I'd say in all three of them, it is built around setups. It's just different payoffs.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, as far as the correct century, i.e., Turn 8, I'm not entirely sure if there's enough in a fighter to really make Turn 8 work. I know Turn 8 was in Evolution, but that's a different kind of game.
Well, and Turn A and Turn X are culminations of previous things. We have representatives that can do stuff that Turn A and Turn X can do. I mean, I can't really think of a reason to put them in a fighter. I can't justify them, essentially.
So then this is where we get into the stuff from the Cosmic Era.
Seed. So the real question we have to ask is, how much of the Seed roster do we actually need?
So
because if we're being honest, a lot of the mecha are pretty iconic. I mean, you know, you've got all of the prototype Gundams. You know, Strike, Duel, Blitz, and Buster.
So here's what I'm thinking. Because the problem with some of the prototypes is some of them are kind of stepping in the same toes as what we saw with Wing.
Yeah.
So, but Strike, I think, is a stance dancer, especially when it comes to all of the different kits that it has. Let's see. As far as Aegis, I'm honestly I'm not feeling that.
Well, and the biggest thing that really, while a lot of the mobile suits in the game, or I mean in the show, like I said, you've got the Gundams, you've got Aegis, you've got, you know, Freedom and Justice later on, and then even later on than from that, Strike, Freedom, and Infinite Justice. You've got those. What were their names? Things like Abyss and then of course you've got all the side materials from Seed, like Seed Astray. Fuck.
Like when I look at say Buster, my mind is going, okay, how could something like Buster even be done without it stepping in the same toes as Heavy Arms?
Actually, Buster would be more like Wing, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Duel is, and Blitz is more like Death Scythe, and Blitz and Duel is more like, well, if we had Victory Gundam V2, because it has its own assault shroud technically. And like I said, there's
and
there are so many mobile suits in Gundam Seed and its side materials that if we're going to have representatives and we're going to have and we're not going to overfill with Seed, we're going to have to cut it down. So Strike Gundam
as a stance dancer, and I think beyond that, Freedom and Justice.
Freedom and Justice. Astray. I'm sorry, but the Astray machines are godly, and they need to be here.
Yeah. Like I said before, Strike with its different kits is a stance dancer. I would say Freedom is a limited use high mobility because of the whole full burst mode.
You mean limited use spammer? High mobility would be Justice.
I think
Freedom is the one that burst mode and the Freedom's burst mode is the one where he locks onto everything and shoots them with all of his lasers.
Yeah. So Freedom is definitely a spammer, but I'd say when it goes into that spam mode, it's not able to move around as much. Mm-hmm. So best not miss, otherwise you're gonna get punished. With Justice, one of the big things with Justice was that its flight pack could be used as a platform, and I think that's what could be built around.
Yeah.
And as far as Astray,
the Astray units would be like I would propose that we do the Astray units the same way that we did the Unicorn units, all on the same square. You're just choosing which pilot and which kits they have.
Yeah, because there's like 5 or 6 different frames.
The way that I would want to do this, if we're going to use the Astray units, hold on, let me get the actual Astray, because we have Astray red frame, Astray blue frame, and Astray gold frame that we're looking at here.
There's also a green frame, a Mirage frame. I think of the Astray frames, if we instead of doing a bunch at once, I think just building around red frame, which because of the whole thing of it carrying that katana, it's going to have a look that stands out, so it's not another jack of many trades.
Monk, I'm okay. So my proposals here are to go with the best version, technically, something kind of not okay. If we're gonna do the triple of them, of the three most iconic Astray frames, which are gold frame Amatsu Mina, red frame Guel Lo, or Lo Guel, excuse me, and blue frame Gai Murakumo. There is a we would use for red frame, we would use specifically powered red.
And actually, I just realized that there was a solution to the issue.
Oh,
You and I have played our fair share of Heroes of the Storm, and there is one character in Heroes of the Storm that is a bit weirder than the others.
okay.
The Lost Vikings.
Oh God, yes. So you want all of the Astray frames to be a single unit that works together.
Yes.
While story-wise, that doesn't make sense since it's usually Guy and Lo fighting Mina. I could see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think we should use powered red, we should use blue frame second revise, and we should use gold frame Amatsu Mina.
Yeah. But
All right, real quick, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and head out. I'm not feeling it right now.
no
all good.
worries, man. Hope you feel better soon.
Thanks. See you later, guys.
So now you already hinted at it, but this is where we get into Anno Domini. So this is where we get into 00.
We're gonna have. Oh my God. Well, we have to have all four of the Gundam Meisters, to be honest.
So given that, which Exia are we going with? Or which double are we going with for Setsuna?
For Setsuna, well, why do we have to choose when we can give him Exia and Exia 00 with Riser and Quanta, all as different units you can choose just for Setsuna.
Yeah. See, as far as Dynamis, I just have that as a sniper.
Dynamaze, Charadim, and Zabanya for the lock-ons.
Mm-hmm. With Exia, I would actually have that as a close range shooter.
Shooter. Why?
Actually, no, I take that back because I think I was thinking about that whole bayonet shit that can happen with Exia.
Okay, so the thing is, Exia has one beam rifle, and it's the one built into the Exia sword.
No, look, thinking back on it, it's a Exia is very much a duelist.
Yes.
Because
especially for you thinking Exia 7 swords, Jesus.
Yeah. I would, but I wouldn't have it as a parry duelist, but rather a duelist with super armor.
I could see that.
Let's see. When it comes to Kyrios and its successors,
they're all transformers. They transform into flight modes.
So
they're aerial superiority.
Yep. So this would be another Air Master.
Yep. Whereas Tiria's units have always been mighty glaciers that can purge into lightning bruises.
Mm-hmm.
But once they purge, that's it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't get their armor and everything back until the next round.
As far as tempting as it would be to bring out Nadi, I think going with Virtue would be more interesting, because with Virtue you have another tanky boy.
Well, what I'm saying is he gets both, because they purge. Every one of the Nodley is the internal mobile suit inside Virtue. Once Virtue purges all its armor, it becomes Nodley.
Now I'm thinking of Kamen Rider Kabuto.
Yeah.
A little on
Cast
the nose
off.
here, to the point where somebody did edit one of the scenes so that it was doing cast off.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
And that's the big thing. Tyria Erde, when he starts the match, he's in Virtue. He's in these bigger Gundams that are all big, bulky boys. And then if and when you choose to purge during the match, the armor comes off.
mhm.
You become the very squishy, very quick fighty boy. And from there, you don't get your armor back until the next round starts.
Yeah. Now, as far as age, do you think age is one that should be skipped?
I think age doesn't really fit, because it was designed from the ground up for a different type of game.
I could see that. And what about...
Or a different type of show, I should say.
Yeah. Not exactly helped by level 5 helping, but also the fact that the big thing was taking place over a longer period of time. But
Yeah.
what about Recongusta in G?
Reconquista in G, I can only really see the actual G self being a representative. And it has a lot of different kits it gets, including one that has become the new ultimate weapon in all Gundam ever seen. The photon torpedoes in that the Reconquista and that the G self and Reconquista can shoot are not the same as giant beams that erase people from existence, Monk. They literally just disassemble matter. People disappear. They don't explode or get crushed or evaporated. They simply disappear. There's actually a pretty infamous scene where Bellry freaks the fuck out when he first uses the photon torpedoes. He's like, "Oh my god, what the hell's happening?" And it freaks him the fuck out. But even then, I can't really see using Reconquista in G, especially if, let's say, it's Sunrise designing this with help from whomever. Reconquista in G did not get a lot of traction in the West.
Yeah.
It was not fairly well received. In fact, probably the biggest recognition of Reconquista in G in a more general sense is people who ordered Super Robot Wars. I forget which one. I think it's either X or T. T. Might be tiered. Where from Southeast Asia to play that game, and they got to see the Reconquista units in it.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't think we need a representative from Reconquista.
Yeah. And
Or G-Reco, as it's called for short.
that brings us to post-disaster, i.e. Iron-Blooded Orphans. Now, putting aside the issues that you've had with Iron-Blooded Orphans, I'm moving that...
Barbados can stay. I like Barbados. It's the only good It's the only actually like good design in the fucking show.
I would add if I would raise one instead of Barbados, go with Barbados Lupus Rex.
I mean, I'm not. When I say Barbados, it just means it and any of its variants, Monk. So that's fine by me.
And I honestly think this one would be a mobility grappler.
Mobility grappler with no long range potential.
No long
Barbados
range
doesn't have any long range, except for his tail, maybe.
Yeah, the tail is the grappling aspect, and the way I see it, that is mainly used to either hold or set up. A lot of these special moves would involve all of the different melee weapons that you see Barbados use throughout it.
Yep.
I mean, obviously the hammer is the main one, but there's a bunch of different weapons that he was using.
I'll have you know, Monk, that isn't called a hammer. It's officially called a mace.
Which is a hammer with extra angles.
A hammer with extra angles. God damn it.
I mean, technically it does. Technically, Barbados did use guns at some point, but it is primarily a melee setup. In fact, I would say a melee setup that is one that is doing more damage the lower its health is, kind of like what Snow had in Dissidia NT.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, Minazuki has no sense of self-preservation.
Well, that's because he's destroyed his body with the Alana Vijnana system.
Mm-hmm.
The man is like, Orga told me to do it, so I better.
Yeah. As far as any others from Iron-Blooded Orphans, the only one I can think of is Bile, and my mind keeps going, what could I do with Bile that isn't already done with Epion?
I know.
But then there's Witch from Mercury.
I'm glad you asked, because there's only really 3 that matter from Witch from Mercury, in my opinion.
I'm guessing one of them is Ariel.
And all of Ariel's rebuild versions, yes.
I'd say not in the same way, but Ariel is another setup fighter.
Yeah.
I'm guessing one of them is Calibarn.
Yep.
Which, how would you handle Calibarn's playstyle?
Calibarn is a mobility burst fighter, not unlike how we kind of have the Camphor work, except much more mobile. Because the Calibarn that cannon is called, I believe, the G Broom.
Yeah. And I'm guessing the third one is Leafrith?
No, not the Leafrith. There was where is it? Gundam Schwarzette. Because I want a representative from Shinsei, a representative from Jeturk, and a representative from Ox Earth Corporation. Schwarzette had a very interesting setup.
Yeah, and
it's a defensive fighter, essentially.
Would you say it's a duelist with super armor.
A duelist with super armor that punishes coming out of guard.
So, yeah, I could definitely see that. I'd say in that regard be somewhat parallel to Baiken, just without some of the range control that Baiken has.
Yeah.
Since I will admit, counterpunchers like her, I always have a hard time with.
I love Baiken. Baiken's one of my favorites to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is John.
I don't hate playing as Baiken. It's just her style for me is like trying to catch with my other hand.
I get it.
Or worse trying to crochet with boxing gloves.
I'll be honest, I've played far too much Guilty Gear and I'm good with far too many characters.
Mm-hmm.
Who don't I like playing? Maybe Bridget. Bridget's just not my style. And May. As much as I love to Totsugeki people to death, because dolphin death is never not funny, May's just not my style.
Mm-hmm. But with that in mind, I was tempted to bring up build fighters, but a lot of the mechs in build fighters are just slight variants of predecessors. That was kind of the point.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if there's any mechs in build fighters that haven't have enough of a voice in that sense, since so many of them are variants of existing ones, like Build Strike.
I don't think that we can really justify having build fighters in.
Mm-hmm. And I know somebody would go, but what about G Savior? What about G Savior? But
I will say nothing,
mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to be a nicer person today.
But so far we only have 4 boss types. Are there any mechs or mobile armors you think could be added to the boss list that we haven't done? Because we've got New ZL, the Devil Colony, Psycho Gundam Mark III, and Neo Zeon.
Many of the boss type units are mobile armors, and many mobile armors are uninteresting.
What about that dragon-looking thing from IBO?
The mobile armor. Which mobile armor?
The one whose parts were used to make the Rex variant for Barbatos.
Let me go look that up real quick. The Hashmal?
Yeah.
You mean the thing that looks like a bird and gave it its tail, essentially?
Yes.
I guess we could use the Hashmal. It's pretty big and it would work.
Oh.
Somebody tried to convince me that the Iron-Blooded Orphans Gundams are the most powerful Gundams ever because they fought mobile armors that are many times bigger than mobile armors in other series. And I'm like, you're wrong and stupid. Continue to be wrong and stupid, please.
Yeah. The big reason that I went with the Hashmal is because there was that subplot of them going out to hunt it in a way that kind of reminded me of knights hunting the questing beast. Because that's more or less what it was. I mean, I said it was akin to a dragon, but that's only because of the way it was framed. What with going out into essentially its lair or its territory. to hunt it with a whole team, most of which don't survive.
Yo.
But I would. But when it comes to, I know we nixed doing the Big Zom because, well, even in universe the Big Zom was a joke, and I think the biggest joke about the Big Zom is that there was consideration of having that mass produced.
Yep.
Which, even at Xeon's height, would have bankrupted them because of how expensive it would be to make something so big.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, there's been this attitude. There's been a kind of attitude that mobile armors are in the same vein as like Levs in Zone of the Enders, or past generation platforms. That's not to say mobile armors are useless.
Mm-hmm.
But another type of boss that I think could be under consideration is a variant mode that is more akin to assaulting a full-on base, like the various flying bases that have been seen throughout the franchise, going all the way back to White Base.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the other problem is mobile armor is such a wide categorization. Because it's covering everything from tanks to flying vehicles to bigger versions of both.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those are the only ones I can think of that could really fit the boss motif. But with all that said, I'd say that's a pretty good spread. Let me see how many playables we have in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 9, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. 37 mechs in a row. Which I'd say is... That's not even that 37 in total. That's not even all that excessive.
No, it's not. That's actually pretty. Like, there have been fighting game rosters with over 50 characters. I mean, if you look at Dragon Ball Z Sparking Zero, it's got like 60 some odd characters, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's 20 is usually a good number when it comes to fighting game rosters, but there's been bigger ones. Although looking at my notes, I realized we had forgotten to nail down what Crossbone's fighting style would be.
Crossbone is a mix-up fighter because of the way that that Crossbone Gundam is it's a pirate for one, and for two, there's a lot of weapons it has that are both surprising and also unorthodox, I guess.
Would you have it that all of its specials could be cancelable, a la Crimson Viper?
I could see that.
Yeah, it would mean Crossbone is a bit of a higher floor, because what I was thinking is they can be cancelable, and thus you could shift right into a whole other special if you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Which would make Crossbone a royal pain to deal with if somebody knows what they're doing. But the trade-off is that trying to do that kind of thing would be a much higher floor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of the fact that it's very reliant on system mastery in order to pull that kind of thing off.
Yeah.
But the point with all of this is to show the potential, as well as to explore the possibility, and of course messing around with our love for giant stompy boys. I think one of these days I will end up having to write a mech RPG, or find a way to creatively reinterpret what we have for Legend Edition into mechs, because I think it could be done. If only so I could say I did a better job of the fantasy mecha thing than Anthem. Because again, I am very petty. But but I'd say that's as good of a point to end off on when it comes to this particular experiment. We will be back here next week with a different kind of construction, and in this case, you can blame John for putting the idea in my head. So keep an eye out for what we've got coming. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and join the watch!
Thank you.